What's up, everybody? This is Ralph Amsden, co-host of the C-Town Rivals podcast. We're about to be joined by Brett Quintyne and Chilly to talk about last week's action in Chandler-area football. But before I do that, just a reminder that the C-Town Rivals podcast is brought to you by ArizonaVarsity.com, the Rivals affiliate site covering all Arizona high school football and basketball in the state of Arizona. You can support us by becoming a subscriber. Just jump onto ArizonaVarsity.com, and if you're not already a subscriber, go ahead and subscribe. It costs about $8.33 a month to support all that we do. Subscribing to Arizona Varsity helps us bring you content just like what you're about to listen to. We are also part of the ArizonaSportsCast.com podcast network. ArizonaSportsCast.com hosts podcasts covering Chandler area football, like you're about to listen to with the C-Town Rivals podcast, as well as high school sports from around the state, the Arizona State Sun Devils, the Phoenix Suns, and Arizona Cardinals. So if you could go ahead and search for Arizona Sportscast on iTunes, become a subscriber, leave a review, that would be fantastic. Without further ado, let's get you to this week's episode of the C-Town Rivals podcast.
This season has just a few weeks left before we get to the postseason. We have just one unbeaten in the Chandler area. A couple of teams were off and a couple of teams posted rebound victories. 5 wins and 1 loss was the final tally, so let's dive in. As always, Brett Quintyne joined by my guys Ralph Amsden and Chilly, and we talk solid football across the board at the 3, 4, 5, and 6A levels. We'll begin with the Valley Christian Trojans. They defeat Odyssey Institute 26-13 to improve to 5-2 on the year. Chris Weaver, the outstanding running back for the Minotaur, he ran for 193 yards, but it was Valley Christian who led 19-0 at the half and got back into the win column. Ralph, we heard from Kirk Sundberg last week, so you know you can't keep a good team down.
No, they're a good team. Odyssey was somebody who they dominated last year, and so I expected that to sort of be the case this year. The fact that they came out throwing was kind of a surprise. I don't know if they were just trying to catch Valley Christian off guard, but Justin Stinson gets 3 first-half interceptions. Odyssey's a team that doesn't really throw the ball all that much anyway. So I think that this is a really, really good win. They need to stay focused and keep their eyes on the prize because they got smacked by the big fish, the Northwest Christians and now Yuma Catholic with the addition of Jamar McFarland, who wasn't around for the first 5 games, and then all of a sudden, he comes in game 6, transfer suspension lifted.
Nice. He
rushes 25 times for 310 yards, 4 touchdowns, all 4 touchdowns in the first half, I think, or maybe 3 of them.
Oh wow!
That was really, really tough pill for Valley Christian to swallow. Heard from Coach Sundberg on last week's podcast, and I got to tell you, man, if I'm going to play for somebody, I want it to be somebody like him. Someone who's not going to make any excuses for me and who wants the best out of me, but understands that it's not going to be yelling and screaming that's going to do it. That accountability is something that can be instead of psychologically manipulative, it can be administered with love, and that's I don't want to say it's rare because you have a lot of coaches out there doing their absolute best to shepherd young men and turn them into good citizens and get the absolute most out of them. But sometimes they're not always going about it in the most healthy way. I really like the way that Kirk Sundberg goes about it, and he said something last week that I've been reflecting on ever since. Which is just that there are a lot of areas in your life where you can try your absolute best and you're going to succeed. Because that's what happens when you try your absolute best. But in sports, you can do all the right things, prepare all the right ways, work yourselves to the bone, and still get your butt kicked. Not just lose, but get trucked. And so just that right there is an important lesson in how you come back from it. And they did a good job in doing that this week. And to, at the end of Chris Weaver's high school career, he's going to look back and he's going to have probably over 7,000 yards rushing. And he's going to remember being 0-2 against Valley Christian. And so that's, I think that's a big deal for Valley to have gone against a player that talented at the 3A level and to have 2 wins against him.
Absolutely.
They might face off in the playoffs again.
Right, that's certainly going to prepare them for the postseason. And Chilly, I know you just like the way that VC has turned everything around.
Well, Chris Weaver is a stud, first of all. So shout out to Valley Christian for handling that business because, like Ralph said, it's always tough when you got to see a talent like that. He's probably one of the most talented 3A players out there. But my favorite thing about this Valley Christian team is right now it looks like Hansel's starting to get his feet under him at quarterback, and I'm wondering if this is going to create a shift so that Legata can move to a natural athlete position like running back or wide receiver or something like that. Because if you notice, over the course of the season so far, Jaden Hansel has progressively thrown for more yards each game. I know he didn't play in one of them, but he started out throwing for like 30 yards and then 50 yards. And then he had the 90-yard game against Page. The 100-yard game, the 110-yard game against Yuma Catholic in a loss, I believe.
Right.
And then now he threw for like 115 last week against the Minotaur. So I like this move. I like this progression, and like I said, I'm hoping that it gets Vinny an opportunity to bounce out to one of his natural like athletic positions like running back or wide receiver.
And indeed, the Trojans are back on the road again in Surprise as they will take on the 2-5 Paradise Honors team. The Arizona College Prep Knights, they played the Knights of Paradise Honors this past Friday, and they came away with a 31-6 victory to up their mark to 6-1. Richard Williams, he keeps getting it done. 228 yards on the ground and a score. Mark Chavez with 3 touchdown passes to 3 different receivers, and ACP has now scored in 9 straight quarters. Chilly, tell us what's good about this team, and it's a lot.
Man, Coach Bluford really has things going. I love Blues Crew. So, they're 6-1 and can't complain too much about that. They got a respectable Fountain Hills team, I guess, coming to play them next. So, this actually I think is at Fountain Hills. But, we'll see what happens the rest of the way. That team's like almost like 500. I don't want to say it's a test because I feel like, they've kind of, passed all these tests so far this season. You just love the direction that the team is going, especially like for the community. It's nice to have another winning team in Chandler.
I thought one of the cool things last week and listening to your interviews was just, I don't know if this is going to sound weird or not, but you were interviewing the receiver and you asked, about his connection with his quarterback, with Chavez. And he said, it's not like we hang out outside of school or anything, but when we're here, we're on the same page. And I think that's really shown this year, and obviously they're getting a ton of production from the running back position. They have an enthusiastic coach who is exactly where he wants to be.
Yes,
who is putting a ton of effort into building this program, and they're smart kids. And you got an entire school full of smart kids making smart decisions on the football field.
Absolutely. So they'll head to Fountain Hills to face the 3-4 Falcons on Friday night.
Fountain Hills has a ridiculous linebacker. Momo is his last name.
Be a good challenge for Richard Williams.
Yeah. And so that'll be, he plays a little bit high and a little bit stiff, but physically he's just going to be the best player on the field. And so it'll be an interesting test for ACP.
Outstanding. And the Seton Catholic Sentinels, will move on to them. They're now 5-2. They took care of the Arcadia Titans 20-6. Seton Catholic allowed a touchdown pass on the first drive of the game, but threw a shutout the rest of the way. It was a 6-2 halftime deficit for Pete Walheim's club, but Mikey Castro, he rushed for a pair of third-quarter touchdowns to seal the victory. Chilly, I know you're a big fan of his. He had a short one, a 3-yard TD, but then he also had a 75-yard burst later in that quarter.
I think the most important thing is that, they were able to limit Arcadia to 6. I know everybody kind of wants to say that Arcadia's beat up, me included, but Coach Kerry Taylor knows how to put points on the board, and he's also familiar with the Chandler-area, so, he kind of was in his own confines at home. But to be able to beat them 20-6 in the fashion that they did, I think speaks volumes about the direction that Seton is going, because we all had our questions with the new coaching staff coming in, Nick Wade's departure, even though he was injured last year, and Vince Wallace leaving. So, I think that they're doing a great job, doing what they got to do, ensuring some of these victories. 5-2, I'm kind of surprised. I'm kind of surprised. But Mikey Castro has been the surprise of the season.
Absolutely, and I'll even throw in one other guy who's a two-way player, because Castro obviously goes both ways. Dominic Constantino, the kicker.
He's good.
I'm a big believer in having a strong kicker at the high school level, because that wins you some games late in the season or against tough opponents, and also he plays a strong defensive back. So, overall, they're getting some great production from guys.
Yeah, his kickoffs are just like wacky. Like he's out there knuckleballing stuff and giving them a chance to not give up any big plays and keep the return team off kilter.
Correct.
He kicked that game winner against Mesquite. One thing I'd like to see from this team is to start a little bit quicker. They got wins against Mesquite and Arcadia, both games that we might have even chalked up as losses before the season started. And they got away with winning those games despite not scoring in the first quarter.
Correct.
Against Mesquite and not having a touchdown in the first half against Arcadia. So, but the defense has been there. They're able to confuse some really talented quarterbacks. What happened to them against Marcos Deniza? It's very possible that the key to beating Seton right now is just to feed the beast in the run game. But I mean, this is a team that it's got all the necessary parts to be good. It's just a matter of will they continue to grow together to be able to do some special things in 4A now that some of the big bad boys of 4A are going to be not playing in the Open Division playoffs.
True.
I do think that somebody has to develop outside of Mikey Castro. I think it's always nice to have that second punch in the 1-2 punch, especially in the 4A, because the 4A is getting more talented. Even though it's going to be kind of diluted with South and Saguaro moving up, there's still the Cactuses and the Desert Edges and things like that. You're going to need to develop somebody to complement Castro a little bit.
Very true, and this team is headed up to Flagstaff this week to face the 4-3 Eagles. The Castile Colts, they had the week off, and they'll face the 3-4 Gilbert Tigers. Castile is 4-3. They're looking for the first win of the season in that always tough Santan region. The Basha Bears, they were blanked by the Hamilton Huskies 42-0 on Friday. They're now 4-3 on the year. Unfortunately, the Bears couldn't get anything going on either side of the ball. For the Huskies, they got their running game going again as Sebastian Dorman and Gabe Armenta, they combined for 200 yards and 3 scores on the ground. Nick Arve tossed a couple of TD passes, one to Brendan Rice and one to Brady Shuck, Tyler's little brother. Chilly, I know you are big on the Huskies. Aside from them being back, whether they are or not, that's to be determined. But overall, it's great to see them play, and I look forward to catching up with them in a couple weeks.
I think even Ralph would admit, they needed to get this Basha game back because of what happened last year. So, good for Hamilton. Unfortunate for Basha. I know Basha's still reeling because they lost their quarterback. Micah Harper, I think, is still trying to figure things out a little bit. He blew up for 250 yards a couple weeks ago, and then, he kind of struggled against a better Hamilton team and threw for 75. But the competition is going to get a little bit heavier because it's a rivalry game.
It's the premier region.
It's Chandler up front.
Sure.
So, I mean, it's not going to get easier for them. But as Ralph pointed out weeks ago, they've already clinched their playoff position. So, I mean, they kind of got to use this opportunity with Micah at quarterback to try to figure some things out and how they're going to, go in the playoffs.
Absolutely.
I talked to a couple of assistants at Brophy this week, and I just said, hey, you lost to Chandler 49-0, but you beat Hamilton. What's the difference? And they said that they felt even almost better about their game plan against Chandler than they did Hamilton. But they said that the one thing that they really noticed is that Chandler went out there and beat up on them and walked back to the sideline. Meanwhile, they felt like Hamilton spent a little bit too much time trying to talk their way to a win.
Interesting. Fair enough.
And I don't know what that is. Because that's definitely not a reflection of Zdebski. Trust me on that. And so, I don't know if because sometimes talking sometimes is fun. Sometimes talking is strategic, but more often than not, it's a little bit of insecurity.
That's true.
It's not. It's like saying that, all right, I gotta pick up some of the slack with my mouth,
as opposed to on the field. No, you're right.
And so. But does Hamilton have the talent to maybe turn around and if they played Brophy again tomorrow, get a win? I believe it. I think that Hamilton is very possibly second or third most talented team in 6A. If you're looking at the roster from top
they're very
to bottom.
evenly matched. Hamilton and Brophy. No, I fully agree.
They just got to find a way to put things together. I do wonder a little bit if. When running the ball was working, they kind of got away from having a balanced offense just for the sake of a balanced offense. So then you kind of just try to come back in and throw the ball when you need to, and sometimes it doesn't always work. And obviously I'm sitting here talking about what a 6-1, 7-1 team that. Like trying to diagnose problems in them. And that's one of the things that I hate about like the NFL playoffs is there's so many people that are only watching such few teams that all of your errors like people
magnified.
Yeah, people talk about like a 13-3 team that loses in the first round of the playoffs worse than a team that went 0-6 team.
That's right.
Because everybody's focused on one team and their flaws. I'm just trying to figure out what it's going to take for Hamilton to get over the hump. Because right now, it's very possible that Higley beats Campo Verde, which bumps Hamilton back into contention for being in the Open Division playoffs, and who knows what kind of.
Because right now they're ranked number 8.
So they're in right now. They'll have a little bit more solid footing, but you can't really depend on anybody to beat Chandler.
Correct.
So
That's right.
If they play Chandler and lose, can they hang on?
Right.
And so it's going to be really, really interesting because if you're Hamilton, you almost have to start thinking about like what would be better for our program. And I think that if anybody who's ever attended Hamilton from 1998 up through 2015 is going to tell you, no, we play
to win the whole state,
to win the whole thing. But I think anybody since then is saying like, we could use a 6A conference championship to get our footing and move toward the
few
bigger
more
prize
games
next
under your
year.
belt. Yeah.
But all I know is that I think they've won. They're about to triple their win total from
last year.
Yeah,
3 wins last year, and they're going to.
That's really all you can ask for.
And it's an off week for the Huskies this week, so they get the chance to figure some things out and move forward. And the Basha Bears, they'll head over to Chandler this week to face the Wolves, who extended their winning streak to 20 games with a 49-0 shutout over the Brophy Broncos. Davian Hunter with 117 yards and 3 scores on the ground. Eli Sanders, 110 on a TD run. Mikey Keene, he throws a couple of TD passes to Jalen Richmond. The defense posts their 3rd shutout of the year. And if you ask me, that's a recipe to be playing on December 7th.
Probably. I mean, we talked about it beforehand. I had somebody tell me that, hey, everybody's playing for second. And I even posted that up on the C-Town Rivals Instagram page that somebody had said, like, we're all just trying to figure out who's going to be second place right now. They're firmly entrenched in the number 1 spot.
And I like that C-Town Rivals Instagram page. In a world of which Twitter is clearly dominant and Facebook, everybody's on and off Facebook, the C-Town Rivals Instagram page brings something to life, whether it's a throwback, whether it's something current.
Yeah.
Definitely there's meaning to that, and I definitely appreciate those posts.
I post more than half those photos of players, without the helmet on. Just so you
I think it's awesome.
Important, to be able to know who it is that you're rooting for and that it's more than just the school, but, to be rooting on these players and what they move on to do beyond the city of Chandler. Anyway, that was the original goal when all this started up 8 years ago. But yeah, definitely give that a follow, and I'm super excited to see what Chandler does from here. Cody and I have been privately whispering, as well as many other people, about whether or not this Chandler team could be up there with some of the best teams of all time, or even possibly be the best team of all time. And then Kevin McCabe just flat out, I had a conversation with him at the Horizon Notre Dame prep game about it, is that like, hey, we're whispering about this, and he just flat out came out and said it on the radio that next morning, and I was like, well, cat's out of the bag. I guess that we can start to maybe have this debate. And the nice thing about the Open Division playoff, and I do have my issues with it, but the nice thing about it is back in 2013, when Mountain Point ran through everybody, and as Chilly always points out, had a soft schedule, but they beat the snot out of everybody. Yeah, including the people who weren't very soft. That year, they didn't get a chance to take a crack at a Sal Point team who, let's just say Mountain Point, I think, had a 3-touchdown win over Hamilton in that 2013 championship.
Sounds about
right? Right? Mm-hmm. Hamilton beat Liberty of Nevada that year by 2 touchdowns. Sal Point beat them by 6 touchdowns. And so, there was a lot of thought that if that year, if Mountain Point had maybe gone up against that Sal Point team, that we would have found out that Mountain Point might not have been the best to ever do it, but maybe that it would have been Sal Point. But
sure.
You don't know. This year we're going to get to find out.
Absolutely.
This Chandler team goes into the Open Division playoff, and the Centennial is going to be right there with them, as well as probably Saguaro and Sal Point, and some very, very good teams. And so there are no more guessing games, at least at the very, very top. So I don't know what you think about that, Brett, but the whispering's out there, and I feel like based on what I've seen so far, maybe it's justified.
I think this is. I was thinking that, and I didn't realize that the whispers were already happening. This is.
I mean, you've seen them twice.
I've seen them twice, and they have been nothing short of dominant in each of the last 3 times I've seen them. Championship game against Perry, Queen Creek earlier this year in week 2, and the Perry game, the regular season game a few weeks ago. And they're great on defense. I mean, yeah, they gave up the 49 points, but they're great on defense. Mark my words, as we've all seen them. And points for is ridiculous. I mean, they've scored over 200 points the last 3 times I've seen them. So I would probably put this Chandler team up there as good as any football team I've seen in the Valley over the last 7 seasons.
Chilly, this is the first time you've seen them in the regular season for a while.
Like 4 years, 3 years?
And
against an Arizona team.
Yeah, and 3 different times this week you've reached out to me and said, like, I've got some stuff to say about this team. So this is what I've been waiting all week for.
Say it.
This Chandler team is by far, without question, the most talented Chandler team I've ever seen on defense. Buckner, Reed, Romney, Maldonado, and it doesn't stop. They have depth. They have guys behind them. The Frankie Moraleses, all these kids.
Forgot about him.
It is. This team is so good on defense. Now on offense, I think it's. I don't think it's as good as some of these other Chandler teams that we've seen, led by T.J. Green, led by Anderson. I think that led by Conover. It would be so tough for me to say that this Chandler team is better than maybe even last year's, because of the war that last year's Chandler team got to go through with Highland. Watching Chandler beat Perry over and over and over again, it's just become routine.
It has been.
It's just become routine.
Yes.
We have not seen this team really tested.
Right.
We have not seen this team get punched in the mouth and see how they rebound, because we saw that against Highland last year.
Yes, we did.
And we saw how Jacob Conover, even Ralph was like not stunned at what Jacob was doing, but just wow, he's finally getting challenged by an Arizona team. So it is just so hard for me to compare Mikey Keene to Conover, and then Grays to when Romney was here.
Right. No, you're right. No.
All these kids like the Johnny Johnsons, even Jacob Conover sophomore year, that offense was ridiculous. I don't know, man. This team doesn't lose on offense, but maybe it's the first year they don't have a 2,000-yard rusher, because they had one last year.
Or when it's all said and done, they have 2 of them. Who knows?
Right.
Who knows what sort of nonsense can happen?
I don't know, because Eli Sanders obviously missed 5, so he only has almost 300 yards rushing. Nesbitt has I want to say somewhere around 500 yards rushing. They have somebody that has 500. Hunter has almost 1,000. He doesn't even have 1,000 yet. So
what would you be more impressed with, though, if they rushed for more yards as a team this year than last year?
I'm wondering if that's going to even be close, because they're going to lose a game. This team's going to lose a game because the Open
is only 3
games instead of 4.
That's very
true.
So
they're going to lose a game. So some of these offensive number comparisons are a little unfair, but it's tough. I mean,
they just do so many things right. I mean,
and we haven't even seen one of my favorite running backs come back yet. Jaheim the Jet Brown Taylor. He's not even fully healthy. So we haven't even seen him get really in he's gotten some rhythm, quote unquote rhythm reps.
Right, that's right.
Try to get his feet under him. But I mean, obviously Hunter did his deal for the first 6 games. You've got to let him kind of just carry it. Jaheim's going to work his way back in, but he's got to work versus Eli Sanders.
Absolutely.
He's got to work versus Nesbitt. And so, he's kind of, unfortunately, getting buried on this depth chart. And not to any fault of his, he was just injured. But, man, last year, him and DeCarlos Brooks was almost 3,000 yards just the 2 of them.
Right, because he ran for 100+ in the title game also.
Yeah. So we haven't even seen him get loose. And I'll tell you right now, I watched him carry one time against Brophy, and I know it was late in the game, so there's probably second stringers in. But man, as soon as he sees that hole, he's gone. And like Ralph said, a long time ago, his feet move so fast that he's just like teleporting from point A to point B. I mean, this team is so talented on defense, so they're so good. Their offensive line group of monsters, and they're using backups right now. Pedro, Nehemiah, the whole unit over there, Winkleman, dude, they're tough. This team is tough. I made the mistake a couple years ago of saying that a certain Chandler team was probably the 5th best out of a handful of Chandler teams. I don't want to get into ranking this one versus other ones, but the only measure for Chandler right now is against themselves.
That's true. No, that's a great point.
It's against themselves until somebody punches them in the mouth and says, hey, look.
Which is a problem that Saguaro has had for several years. That's all we talk about. It's like, would this Saguaro team beat that Saguaro team?
But, I mean, at least with Saguaro, there was going up. Could they beat Centennial? Could they beat Chandler? Could they beat these big dogs? You know what I mean? Yeah. With Chandler, it's like, can we compare this Chandler team to the best Chandler teams ever? Could we compare this one to the one led by Bryce Perkins? Could we compare it to the ones led by Conover?
Sure.
And that's a tough task. I don't want to put that pressure on Mikey Keene, who does do some things, but man, that's a tough task. Conover.
It's a strong unit. I mean, just in general. I mean, it's weird. I think last time when we walked out of Sun Devil Stadium, you kind of posed a question. It's like, when does little brother finally beat big brother? And honestly, I had no clue that Chandler would be this good. I mean, we were thinking that, all right, hey, Perry has Purdy returning and some other intangibles. Maybe 2019 was the year that the gap closed. Maybe. I think that's why you posed the question. And we thought about it. And, I mean, clearly the answer has been, hasn't even been answered. It's been a statement made.
So, if I'm Brophy, and I'm not.
You mean the Brophy team that gave up 36 points in 7 games and then 49 to Chandler?
But to be fair, at the end, Brophy was trying to put one touchdown on the board, and I think the ball slipped out of Warner's hand, and it turned into a pick six.
Ouch.
Yeah, so that's how they got that last touchdown. So it probably should have been 42-0. It just didn't work out that way.
If you're Brophy.
But if I'm Brophy, I do take something out of this. One, I do think that they took the best shot from Chandler. I think they took the best shot from Chandler. They technically gave up 49 points, but they didn't give up 84. And I know they got to figure out a way to put some points on the board, but I think that's all they have to do, because the second that they figure out how to put some points on the board, that's naturally going to take some points off from Chandler.
Let's play a would you rather with somebody who I know hates losing more than almost anybody I know but my wife. Would you rather drop almost 50 on Chandler but give up 84, or get blanked and give up 49?
I'd rather get blanked. I am not giving up. I am not going to an in and out, running into somebody from the other team and have them joke about almost resetting the scoreboard on me. There is no way.
Because I seriously thought 90 might be scored in this game.
That is not possible. Getting close to triple digits in a football game, you are not putting up basketball scores on my team. There's no way. I will take that bagel.
That I sent out that
that Chandler football
has averaged more against Perry than Chandler basketball has averaged against Perry.
I did see that. Yes.
And see that's absolutely bonkers. That there's no way. And defense is a thing. And I am not giving up. I'll take the shutout. Yes. I'll take the bagel. As pride swallowing as it is, I know that I could go back. And start picking some things out to work on. Mm-hmm. And the way that Chandler scores these basketball scores against Perry, I don't know if Perry has figured out how to stop that. They clearly haven't.
4-3 Perry, they face 7-1 Brophy. Big matchup.
I'm excited about this.
That's going to be it's a measuring stick for both teams. Has Brophy bounced back? What's Perry got in the tank against somebody other than Chandler? That sort of thing.
I mean, because I have this theory that the best player in the state right now, and I mean when I say best, I definitely don't mean technically sound, because this kid needs a lot of work at the collegiate level. He's got a lot of bad habits, but I think that just sort of comes from being able to make all these plays. Is Chubba Purdy? I think that he is the most electric player in the state right now. I mean, I watched what he did to Chandler. Every single thing that he did looked sloppy, and it worked. You were there.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Just like every throw was like back foot, falling over.
And somehow,
like you shouldn't have thrown that.
Correct.
And it worked.
Somehow it was completed, yes.
And so, I mean, this Brophy defense, I love it. I think they played really well against Chandler in that first half. I cannot wait to see what Chubba does against
the Brophy defense.
Yeah,
you're right.
And, and they have some other players shine that I was kind of surprised by. And
Jalen Young stepped up a little bit.
Yeah, Jalen Young stepped up a little bit. And this is my first time getting a really good look at Brock Lane because I know he spent a lot of time hurt last year. And Perry is a tight end factory. In a world where having a tight end in high school football is basically optional, and you say nil, I mean, and you're not far off.
Right.
Like very few teams actually employ a tight end, and even fewer have a true someone in a tight end body.
Right.
Yeah. Perry has like 8 of them, which is wild to me. And they've and they've sent some to college the last few years. Whether it's back from Lane Veach, I think, at one point,
Patterson.
Deano Motis was projected as a tight end. I think he's an offensive lineman now. Tate Speaker, Kyle Patterson. So, I mean, they've had some guys play this position. Brock Lane might be the best of all of them. Like, he's very fast. He's got very good hands. He doesn't just run that seam route. He can run some others. And he likes to be physical. He's like a legit 6'5", 240.
Right, he's like I said, he has a tight end body. He's built for that position.
Colleges kind of need to wake the hell up on this kid. And I try not to. And I tweeted this. I try not to gas people up who maybe don't deserve it, especially when I'm projecting them as actual collegiate prospects.
That's fair.
Because I'll talk about you as a player all day long. But if I say that colleges owe it to themselves to come and look at you, I rarely say that. And after watching him in person and going and watching his film, it's like, what else could you want? The GPA's there, the body's there, the speed's there, the hand's there, the physicality is there. Is it just because he doesn't have enough junior film? Take a look at his senior film. Because, ASU, you have 20 total tight end receptions in the last 4 years? Go get a kid that can catch the football. Mm-hmm. I don't know, man. I really like Brock Lane.
Well, it's good stuff. So, indeed, Perry and Brophy. And I'll say this, very rarely are the three of us at the same game, but just jumping back to the Chandler Wolves, I feel on December 7th, we'll all be seeing the Chandler Wolves at Sun Devil Stadium.
Oh, yeah. They can punch their ticket for sure. It's just a matter of who's going to be playing.
It's who their opponent is, yes.
I can't even imagine. There's not a single player that... It is so rare that there's not a single player on Chandler that you could remove that would change that dynamic. I feel like if you take away a Jeremiah Trojan at Hamilton, that they're going to struggle. If you take away a Chuck Perry, I don't even know what they would look like. Obviously, we saw what happened with Gabe Friend, and now we know how good Gabe Friend is.
Right.
This has been an important lesson to learn. I know some colleges out there are paying attention. Gabe Friend was legit.
He was the deal, yeah.
But there's not a single player I could take off of Chandler and say,
and that it's a drop
will
off
affect them all that much.
No, they got 3 stud linebackers: Romney, Orr, and Reed.
Correct.
Williams, Maldonado, dude, all these kids, Tyler,
Yeah.
Buckner, Magali, dude, this team is so deep on this
both
defense.
Magalays, holy heck, they're both talented. Hey, for anybody who's listening to this podcast, you probably know that Brendan Rice is already committed, so huge congratulations out to him. Not going to reveal it because this podcast might come out before he actually announces, but I'm proud of him and looking forward to seeing what he does at the next level.
Outstanding. Ralph, Chilly, Brett, we're out.